So I'm going to get started. I'll put this into PowerPoint mode so we can see all the information here. Really excited to be here today and being part of the Canadian Virtual HR Conference. My session today is entitled "To Have Diversity, It Starts with Inclusion." And so I'm really looking forward to the conversation as well and other questions and just connecting with all of you. My name is Brien Convery. I am the National Director of Early Talent Acquisition for RBC Canada. And essentially what that means is I'm responsible for all of the student hiring across the bank, coast to coast, from Vancouver to Halifax and everything in between. We hire all students, undergrad and new grads, as far as our graduate leadership development programs. And again, for all areas of the bank. So everything from from tech and digital to front office to client facing, and all of our operational roles and everything as well. So quite a gamut of recruitment we do for students. Typically, we hire, at least in Canada, close to 2,500 students a year. Summer being our largest, and this was our summer where we actually brought on over 1,100 students virtually. So it's been an interesting summer to say the least, but we've learned a lot, and it's been a great experience. So what I really want to do is just kind of talk a little bit about who I am, because I feel most human resource people and recruiting people are pretty friendly, and you want to get to know a little bit about each other. So I'm just overall, I'm a big fan of pop culture. I love everything trending on Netflix or radio, TV, what have you. I'm a really big pop culture fan. I love really, really cool socks. So this summer, I kind of took it up a notch with COVID-19, and I decided to wear a different pair of socks every single day and put out a sock working from home sock challenge to the students and to anyone that would participate with me. Unfortunately, I didn't realize how long this pandemic was going to go, so my sock drawer got pretty low, but now I started doing it weekly, and anyhow, so that's sort of my thing is cool socks. And I like to drink lots and lots of iced coffee. I'm super passionate about people, and I think if you're in HR, this is probably a given, but I think my focus on people is really around how to help them navigate and how to have them feel part of organizations as they're exploring and coming in. And I get the real pleasure of working with a lot of youth talent. So it's pretty nice for me that I get to meet young people early in career and kind of talk to them and work with them as they look about where they're going. So it's super powerful when your passions and your career kind of collide, and I've been lucky to do that. So I'm really excited about that. So let's get into the conversation. So last couple weeks ago, I saw this cartoon around diversity is good, pass it down. And at first I went back to it a couple times because I wasn't quite sure if the publication was trying to poke fun at it or share it in a reason to spark conversation. But I did decide to use it today because when I kind of look at this cartoon, I don't think diversity, inclusion, or belonging is anything to poke fun at. And it's something that is really core to my values and core to the company that I work for as well. But when I looked at this, it was really clear to me that everyone here at the table is alike. Everyone looks alike. Everyone is the same color. Everyone's dressed the same. And this to me just looks like a boring place to be. And so, when we look at diversity and inclusion, really we need to look around and look across the table who's sitting across from us and really question and ask ourselves if we have the right people in the room, and are the right people not just invited to the room, but are included in the conversation. A couple of years ago, I was able to write I wrote a blog post on LinkedIn around inclusion and how rolling out the employee welcome mat is something that you need to think about. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. It was a blog that I ended up getting published in the Syric magazine, which goes out to all students across Canada, both digitally and in print. And this was one of the quotes that I had put into that blog and into that publication that, I'm just going to read it out loud, but diversity is understood by many as the condition of being different, whereas inclusion is thought to be the act of making a person part of a group. So again, diversity is understood by many as being different, and inclusion is thought to be the act of making a person a part of that group. And really, the last part of this statement is the one that really hits home for me the most and belonging is how you make someone feel. I think we can all think of different times in our lives where maybe we didn't feel like we belonged, or we struggled to belong in a group or an organization, or even at a family gathering, and it doesn't feel great. And when you bring that transition of those feelings and those thoughts to the workplace, it can really impact someone's ability to perform and to be their, not just their true authentic self, but to actually be able to deliver on what they're trying to do and not be worried about trying to fit in or what's different about them. So everyone really has a story, and I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to share a little bit of a story today. I myself identify as a gay man, so I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community. And when I was a young boy growing up in New York, in upstate New York, I had an experience in the third grade that still resonates with me today. And it was a story about how I would always play on the swings with the girls at recess. And, it's something I like to do, it's something I enjoyed. I didn't really think about it. I mean, how old are you? 8 in third grade? And it was just something I naturally felt was the right thing to do. And I remember it was a warm spring summer night, and I was back home after school having dinner with my parents and my sister, and the phone rang. And this is in the day when the phones were on the wall, and you didn't have cell phones or anything like that, obviously. And my dad took the call and sounded very serious, and then when he got off the call, he asked if I could come away from the table and have a conversation. And so I followed him into the bedroom, and we had a conversation, and he said, that was your third grade teacher, and I need to talk to you. And so things going through my head were, was I passing notes in school, which I was always doing? Was I talking in school? Yes, I always was talking. So there's always things going through my head of what am I in trouble for? And basically he just said, you know what, she called because you need to stop playing on the recess with the girls on the swing boys. And I just sat there, and I really, it felt like time froze as an eight-year old, and I couldn't really grasp why this was wrong or wasn't the right thing to do, and it just felt natural to me. And so I went through a whole bunch of feelings, but basically I realized that it was something I was doing that wasn't in the norm or wasn't societally accepted, that I shouldn't be playing with the girls, I should be playing with the boys. And the next day I signed up for soccer, and I went off on my way. Um, and to be really honest, I did fit into that arena. I did start playing soccer. I played soccer well, but it was just this idea that someone had at back then that age had pointed out my difference as if it was an issue and that it was interfering with others and that I needed to correct it. The reason why I share that story is because for many people in various degrees of diversified groups, or in groups of identity of different groups, there's a thing we call sometimes the identity cover. And so in my community, I just wanted to share this for those that might not be aware of it, but is a thing called an identity cover. And this is well researched and well documented in a lot of publications and things. But the bottom line for me is how I identify with the situation is I called it the Clark Kent syndrome, Clark Kent Superman syndrome. And what do I mean by that? Clark Kent is a conflicted and lonely person, right? In the movies, he's just quiet. His identity is really not known, or his purpose. Whereas Superman is this big animated person, incredible strength, impervious skin, extraordinary abilities, courageous, lots of strength. At the end of the day, they're the same person. But what this identity cover that Superman has had to cover himself up is this symbol of being Clark Kent. So many people in the LGBTQ2S plus community grow up with this identity cover, as mine was set at a young age, at 8 years old in the third grade, and carried me all the way through when I got to work, and into a university and work. And so, and when you're asked to be your true authentic self, and we always say, bring your full self to work, and all these expressions we use, sometimes it's pretty hard when you spent 20 plus years of your life either living something differently or covering it with an identity cover to actually know who to be at work. So I just wanted to share that personal story because I think it helps us talk more openly about how people are feeling and the idea of belonging. So when we look at your situation at your organizations, and some of you here are in diversity and inclusion roles, as I saw in the chat, it's really based about your employee's journey. So that full end to end, and it really starts not when they get onboarded, but even back to when they go and look at your job postings, the recruiting cycles. And since I focus a lot on the front end of the journey, I'm going to talk a lot in the next few slides about ways that you can take away some ideas that you might think about, or maybe enhance some of the things you're already doing at your organizations. If you're not responsible for recruiting in your organization, that's totally fine. But you could also bring these ideas back and share those with your folks back in the office. But so again, thinking of the full journey, what is your journey? So inclusion starts with the job posting. Okay. What's interesting about this is there's a lot of research out there. So I pulled some research from ZipRecruiter, and a lot of the job listings with gender neutral wording gets 42% more responses than that is not gender neutral. So meaning it's either feminine or masculine. And you can see some of the words to the right that represent those different characteristics. So, as you think through your job postings and the words you're using, it's really important to use gender neutral wording. And this is something we've dug deep into at RBC. I'm going to show you a screenshot of a tool we use. But basically, we really had to stop in our tracks because a lot of the recruiters would take the previous job posting and just copy it, right? They get into sort of that mode of just moving ahead and copying the information. So we went through a whole revamp of words, and we brought in the tool, and we're looking at this slightly different than we were before. The real challenge is that masculine themed words are prevalent across all industries and are really out there in so many shapes and forms. And what do many of us recruiters do? We go and look at other organizations to see what words are they using, what ideas are they choosing. And if 70% of those out there are not following this gender neutral approach, then you're maybe not following the best in breed. A solution or an idea, this is one of the things it's called a job analyzer tool. And essentially what it does is it takes your job posting and it runs through and tells you specifically what is not gender neutral. And so things in this example I took showing a job from our own job community was, outstanding masculine words being competitive, outstanding feminine words, listen, understand, and thrive. And some of these things you may think don't necessarily translate that way, but all this AI and work that's gone into these analyzer tools, it really helps to clean it up again to be gender neutral. And so at the end of the day, it's just good business to use gender neutral wording in all your job listings because it starts the journey in a positive way. Okay, so this slide is looking at the world we live in today. I think you'd have to be pretty much under a rock to not realize there's a lot of human rights challenges going on right now around Canada, the globe, North America, what have you. And when you start to look at things like Me Too and Black Lives Matter, human rights and as well as LGBTQ fluidity and gender fluidity, there's a lot happening. And none of us can be necessarily an expert or walk in any of these shoes if in fact we don't either identify as those groups or we don't understand. And part of it is just the awareness raising. And that's part of what I'm doing today is just to kind of get us thinking differently together, because I think as we start to chip away at this, we can really make an impact for people and also for our organization. So I'm going to share just a couple things. So we talked about the job, the posting. Now let's talk a little bit about the job application. So what do applicants and candidates and employees just want? They want choice, right? This isn't different. This isn't different from 10 years ago in the workplace. Everybody wants choice. They want choice to be who they are. They want choice to declare who they are. They want choice. Where we're behind in a lot of ways is in sort of our systems and our documentation and sort of our processes and our computer systems. This is where things haven't really caught up to the world in some cases. And so first off, I wanted to talk about choice and how someone might like to identify. And a lot of us, I know in different organizations, deal with this. I know I get questions all the time about our male-female ratio of hiring and how we're doing. And I was just on a call this week talking about how we're updating how people can identify. And I was asked to talk a little bit about this. And I said, look, everything you read right now with the younger generation is things are moving towards more gender expression and gender fluidity. And so there's a lot of people that choose not to respond if there isn't an X, or they're questioning right now where they fit on the spectrum for gender. So a lot of organizations just have male or female. We are in the process, we are looking at adding X like the government, and we always had, I choose not to respond. The challenge here too is how do you educate your business leaders, right? So it's not just the HR group, but how does the business leaders change to this structure and this new idea? Because I get the request, we need more female applicants in the system. Well, in now and even in the future, is that going to be a realistic question if in fact people are not identifying by their gender, but maybe by something else? So again, just awareness training and ideas around how you might look at your job application and take a look at what you currently have. The other one about, again, LGBTQ2S+, a lot of organizations out there still don't ask this question. They're afraid to ask this question. Not sure someone would want to reply. Again, it's choice. I may choose as a gay man not to say that, but as of right now, I would not do that. I do say yes. But the point is, people need choice to say it, and people need choice to say, yes, I do identify with this community in the part of the job application. And we'll talk about the value identifying in a few minutes. The other one that's really come up, especially with Black Lives Matter and BIPOC, which Black, Indigenous persons of color, many of us have been talking about this in HR now. We're a bit behind here. We're trying to do a little bit of catch up because we've identified our application process by the government with visible minorities, and we call out Indigenous separately currently. But now we're really going to task, and this has escalated and I would say escalated, has ramped up the attention on this about how do we actually add. So I've shared some of the words like people and we're considering now as 2 or more races. This is a big thing in Europe where they may identify as multiple. So why is that not a choice? South Asians, Asian, Black, African American, Canadian, African American, Caribbean, West Indian. All these are different ways for people to identify. And so as again, you're kind of looking at your job application process, what do you ask today? Is it visible minority, white Anglo-Saxon kind of thing? Or is it, do you actually allow people to go deeper into visible minority to actually identify further? Talked a little bit earlier about gender identity, gender expression. For folks that are a little kind of getting up to speed with these terms, this is a really easy way to explain it. So gender identity is a person's internal sense of feeling or being male, female, both, or alternate, such as gender-free or even gender fluid. Gender expression is how we express our identity. So our hair, our clothes, the way we speak, do we conform to the socially defined behaviors of masculine or feminine? So why these are important when it comes to HR, recruiting, and belonging, it's because if your recruiters and hiring managers aren't aware of these terms and understanding of these terms, you may not have the awareness and understanding for them to conduct themselves in interviews with people that may want to identify differently or may want to express themselves more feminine than masculine in the way they dress when they come into the office and when they ask the specific restroom to use. So these are just some of the things that are helpful. Another choice is how would that person like to be identified? So a big thing right now and have been going on is pronouns. I should have said earlier, I identify as he, him, and his. I have it in my email. I have it in my email signature. I have it on my LinkedIn profile. I have it everywhere. And I started doing that just as a bit to get out there so people know I am open and also respectful of people's pronouns. And I think that that's a big deal when it comes to the interview. Asking someone, do you have a preferred pronoun that you'd like me to use for this interview is a good question these days. It would be worse to call them by the wrong pronoun. We also have, we have gone through training for our recruiters, so they also understand the use of pronouns. And we've also looked at our own social media channels, so we all can actually share our own preferred pronouns wherever possible, so people can feel that that's something they can express and something to think about. So again, takeaway there would be thinking about your signature line, your email, your LinkedIn profile, and just when you do interview days or other events. Just checking time. Okay. So I talked about the article I wrote called "Roll Out the Employee Welcome Mat" for Stirrick Magazine. It was geared towards, specifically in that time, it was around the LGBTQ space, but there's a lot of specifics around barriers to hurdles to the workplace that that were in this article that I wanted to share with you today. So number one, look and examine your organizational values, your culture, and your communications. How are you communicating your cultural values? How are you talking about your organizational values? All how it relates to diversity, inclusion, and specifically belonging. Look to recognize existing barriers and biases. They exist. We all know they exist. How do you break them down through education, communication, and cultural change initiatives? Where are you having those challenges? How do you talk about it openly? Be okay for someone to say, I don't know what question to ask. I'm afraid I might offend someone. What do I supposed to say? Allow people to have that ability to recognize those challenges they're having and be able to communicate them. We've hosted, I would say in the last few months, a number of open dialogue conversations on chat rooms and using tools like Slido and others to really allow our employees to talk about like, where do they need help and where are they running into some of these challenges. And then start with a value-based welcome mat. Okay, so if you think about all the values that your company has, the values you have as an organization, the values you have as an individual and as a hiring manager, put that welcome mat there beyond the recruitment cycle. I can go out and I can represent and I can talk as a recruiter to candidates and people about the experiences I've had and the experiences I see at the organization. The challenge I tell the hiring managers and the folks that are bringing these folks into the organization is they have to see the welcome mat once they arrive. There's a lot of stats out there, especially with young talent, that if they don't feel valued and they don't feel comfortable and they don't feel that they belong, they will leave. They will not wait, they will leave. And you just lost great talent because you haven't had that welcome mat prepared for them when they've come in to be a part of an organization and to be part of a team. Clear the roadblocks for inclusion. Promote and share your company policy on diversity and inclusion with your employees. How many times you may be out at a barbecue or in a conversation or at an event, if your employees don't understand your diversity and inclusion points of view and your policies, they're ambassadors of your organization. They need to know that you do support different types of diversity and inclusiveness at your organization. But then also articulate it to their business objectives. You know, maybe this year, as you're looking closer, why not tie diversity and inclusion into sort of their hiring goals and targets, not to click a box, but as a business objective to be cognizant of that table, back to that slide where everyone looked the same and everyone was sitting around the table. Try to figure out ways that you can build business objectives that are easy to achieve, or maybe not easy to achieve, a challenge to achieve, that you can actually put out there and tie that to that. Next, I'd say create community. I can't say enough about this. At RBC, I've been involved in a lot of days of service in the fact of working with diversified groups of students from all different walks of life and backgrounds. And then there's other things we do, run for the kids, different things. But those community impact days really get your employers and your people engaged from an experiential learning perspective, but they also get to reinforce the value of your diversity inclusion in the community. Introduce an employee resource group. I think many folks here are from D&I, so employee resource groups are probably pretty well known, but for those that don't know, it's really just a supportive group of specifics, supporting a specific diversity group to allow those people to connect and to talk and to be together and to run events. So I'm part of the Pride group at RBC, and of course we march in the Pride Parade when it happens. We've done a ton of events. I've gone to Rainbow Railroad, which helps get people out of countries and pays for them to to escape. And I've been at charitable donations through that, and running around with the clipboard and collecting money and everything. But the resource groups really give us an ability to connect people. And I think these days the biggest thing that I've been talking about with my teams are about the intersectionality of these groups, because none of us are one-dimensional. So you may be a woman in banking who also identifies as a person with disability, maybe non-visible. So maybe you want to join multiple groups. And I think that's where the challenge for organizations now is, how do we combine the intersectionality and bring that to the table as part of the welcome mat? And that's really my presentation for today. I think I left about 5 minutes for questions, which was good timing. So yeah, and so I just wanted to say for having me. This is such a passionate area for me, and it's something I really enjoy talking about. I think there's, each and every one of us owns diversity and inclusion at an organization, and I think, if you think back to those moments of not belonging in the story I shared, that's as raw as it was when I was 8 years old, and that feeling of not fitting into a group. And when we look at hiring and recruiting in organizations, we need to change the conversation from, is this person a good fit for our company or our team or for the job? I always say, is it a good cultural add? Not fit, add. How do we add them here? What are they going to bring that's going to add to the conversation? So anyhow, that's my last bit there, I would say, on my presentation. I want to thank you for coming out to spend some time with me today. I look forward to being in the chat room later and hopefully meeting a few of you as well personally through the chat room and through the networking. I don't know if I guess I could take any questions you might have. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. Yeah. Welcome at Aswed as recruiter, Jimmy. Right. Absolutely. That welcome mat is something we need help. And I think one of the things I did this a couple of years ago at another organization. I brought a bunch of sports. I brought on a football and a soccer ball. I put them on the table. I said, look, we all are part of this team, and recruitment's a team sport. And this is with like the general manager, some pretty high ups. They were like, why is he throwing a soccer ball on the table? But you get the point. Like, we need to be together on this and in this together. And if there's different ways you can connect to people, whether it's the welcome mat, the analogy of the balls from a team perspective, but that belonging. When you bring up the word belonging with diversity and inclusion, people definitely say they get it, because I don't think there's anyone that hasn't felt that they didn't. And it's not a great feeling. So thanks again, everyone, for joining, and really appreciate it. And thank you for the comments. Yeah, cultural add. Let's go for add, not fit. So thank you, everyone. And yeah, we'll see you at the next session.